This is a intro episode of Remo's podcast. That's how I say it. Yeah, it's weird. I know, looking at myself from the PC and then talking alone in one room. That is definitely something new for me. And so why this episode? Or why this podcast even? So I really just needed a hobby. I have once been already in this position before as well, when I was in the military. Back then I had only one hobby on the weekends. Yeah, it was called drinking. And that hobby wasn't really productive, or it just didn't really provide much. Nothing else but fun and trouble. So then I decided I need a hobby. And back then I chose a hobby which was more productive for me. And at that time, the hobby I chose was cooking. So I then started spending more time on cooking. And the previous hobby, it was fun. We tried to get rid of my hobby, the drinking hobby, a lot in many ways in my team. Initially, my commander kind of suggested that, hey, Remo can only drink when he's around with the whole, like someone from the team. Eventually what happened, the whole team started drinking more. So yeah, very proud of that. And then eventually I had to be commanded. I went to my commander and actually told him that, hey, could you command me not to drink for a half a year? And then he said eventually that, okay, you can't drink for half a year, and that's a command. And then I didn't drink for half a year. Very logical. My brain is very logical. So maybe that's another reason why I want to do this podcast. I want to better understand my brain and also leave a mark here for my children, and so that they could actually look at this at some point and see what I was thinking, and show them that I'm struggling as much as they are on different things, or at least I'm wondering and experimenting on things, and I'm not definitely going to give up on anything. So hoping to record some of it just to have it for them, and maybe if someone else cares, then for them as well. So a new hobby, and I hope that this one will be more productive than the previous ones I've had. And one of the reasons is also that I want to learn better English, and I think this accomplishes that as well, because I have to start pronouncing better, I have to start speaking better, I have to start just getting used to speaking in English more, pronouncing the words, and I think that will be overall net profit for me. So regardless if anyone is listening or not, eventually this will be good use of time, I think. Maybe a little bit about my background. So my background, there is a long episode from Jaco podcast which kind of explains my background as well, but I will do it in 5 minutes, hopefully. So I was single child, born and raised in Estonia, kind of in the summers in the countryside, in the city, during the school time in the city. I was pretty okay at school until ninth grade. Then I started and found drinking. Then I also found poker, so I started playing poker. I would say I did still good with grades. I just didn't go to school so much during the high school. I also started making money with playing poker, as I said. That kind of turned me into bad habits. Overall, not being healthy enough, not not training enough, not doing much. So I was overweight, and then eventually I did pretty good at poker. Made more money than my parents, and then I moved out from my home, and eventually I went to university because the parents really wanted me to go to university because it's very important, right? I didn't think so though, but still I went to university, played poker, and then eventually I had in Estonia we have a conscription service, which is a mandatory military service, and then you have to go. So I went there, and there I realized that I was weak and I sucked at running. So I was the one who you see in the movies who are pushed, who is the last man. Can't run very fast because of his body weight, I would say. But eventually, after the boot camp, I was in pretty good shape. And as I was in a good shape now, I kind of started enjoying it. I loved the process. I loved what we did. And then a co-founder of Combat Ready, Martin, he was there as well. He was already a military personnel, and then he eventually promoted this thing called the Estonian Special Operation Forces, that it's something that he just created, and that he just passed the selection. So what I did, I really just went for it. I tried to go and see if I can walk with the best of the best. That's what our country has to offer. And for whatever reason, I passed the selection. And then I spent 8 years in that unit. And then I retired in 2018, after which I started playing poker again. I played poker for 1.5 years-ish. Then I pretty much, as I failed all of that, I would say in a summarizing way, that was a failure. It wasn't failure for my personal development, because that was the time when I started reading books, first time in my life. That was the time when I started thinking more about the whys of life, I would say. Until then, I was just winning at everything what I did. I would say everything what I put my mind into, I just won. I accomplished whatever I wanted. And eventually that was the point where nothing really worked out for me. Everything went kind of wrong at the one time. Everything came together. And then I split with the mother of my child, of my first child. And that's where things started to make sense more. After I kind of split from that relationship, then I kind of started had to figure out where to get money, because I was broke, and I would say even in debt, and not having a job, not having anything in the civilian sector. Then I stumbled upon myself in the defense industry and found out that a few of my buddies are working in one company, and eventually they took me on board. And then I spent 3 years there selling tanks in the Middle East, I would say, like robotic infantry fighting vehicles or robotic infantry support vehicles and so on and so forth. And just a startup world where things are fast, and that's how I like things. And it was very similar to my experience in Special Operations Forces, because it was very similar, because Estonian Special Operations Forces was a startup, I would say, when I joined, because nobody knew how to do it. So we had to invent the bicycle ourselves together with Americans. And So that's why I recognized a lot of those things, that there were a lot of similarities to those two worlds, military and civilian. So in the civilian sector, what I eventually started doing, I was selling the tanks. And what I mean by selling, I would say in that it's just building relationships and talking with military people, talking smacks, talking shit, and then eventually coming up with words on paper and going through tenders, because that's how governments buy things. They don't just buy things randomly. And also they're working with partners and building networks. So I found it to be pretty awesome job, because I was in startup. You can do whatever you want. If you have a right attitude, you can get after it. So that's what I did. I got after it pretty hard. And during that time, we kind of figured out. Martin called me, the same dude that recruited me to the Estonian Special Operations Forces. He called me, and next day we established Combat Ready, which is a leadership consultancy company, and we base everything on the principles of Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. So extreme ownership is the framework, and obviously that's the reason why I in the beginning mentioned that go and listen to the 3-hour-long podcast on Jocko's podcast, because that's the whole story, I would say. Talk there about the military service and everything like that. But yeah, then we started this company. Initially did it on as a part-time gig on the side to the selling tanks. But then eventually it got to be big, or bigger, not big. And we really start to enjoy it. And now, for 3 years we've been working on that, working from kindergarten teachers to children, to ministries, to military, startups, big ones, small ones, everything, every industry. And also I have a family. I have 2 kids. I have a wonderful wife, Anneli, and we have a daughter who is now somewhere between 4 and 5 months, and 9-year-old daughter Sarah. And here we are in Estonia, and that's pretty much. It wasn't 5 minutes, most likely, but that's the story. And definitely maybe at some point we can talk about more about this. But what are we going to talk about in this podcast is not me, because I really don't like to talk about me, because it's not interesting to me. I already know what's in me, in that sense, in my brain. Even though sometimes when I philosophize, and I most likely have a pretty decent accent, which is Estonian accent, I guess. So I like philosophy. I like ideas. And where I got to that thing, I think I understood it, was looking Joe Rogan's podcast when I played poker. Then at some point when I retired from the military, he was the kind of eye-opener for me. So thank you, Joe Rogan, for opening my eyes on many, many, many things. On books, on successful people, because I started looking at his podcast from episode 1000. And I watched, I think, next 400 episodes straight, which is about 1,200 hours of content. And I watched that, and that's maybe one of the reasons why I wasn't very successful at poker, because I was watching Joe Rogan rather than focusing on playing the game. But he really opened my eyes. That's where, through the podcast, I saw Jocko's interview, Then from there, I kind of stumbled upon valuetainment, and Patrick Bet-David was my second mentor, I would say. And then eventually Jocko Willink started his podcast. So those three were my go-tos podcasts that has changed my life, I would say. Because without those podcasts, I wouldn't have recognized so many things. And that's just a free education. And on a very high level for me. And it just opens up your mind to different ideas. So that's why I will try out to do something similar, and maybe it will be useful for someone else as well. So what will be the formats of this podcast? So one version will be exactly what we are doing at the moment, or what am I doing at the moment. Me just speaking about whatever I want to speak. I have no idea what I want to speak, but I have sometimes ideas that I post on LinkedIn or social media, and I would like to expand on those, because I think I haven't really talked out loud to myself in this manner. So maybe there is some ideas that I would like to go over. Maybe there are some topics that I would like to go over, which are interesting to me, and maybe they are interesting to some others as well. So definitely, if whoever cares, you can ask me to go over a topic, and maybe you get a perspective that is different from yours, or that's interesting to you. Second thing will be the interviews with people. And I don't want to limit it to only military people, because it will be most likely for other people as well. But there will be a lot of military people who I'm going to speaking with, some of my buddies, some of people who has trained me, some of my people who has been around. And I would like to bring more European soldiers on, because I think at the moment there is a lot of American soldiers whose stories are pretty awesome. I would like to learn more about European military stories as well. Even though we are living in a situation where I think a lot of soldiers don't want to speak out here in Europe, and there is a very logical reason. We are in war, and being out in open doesn't really do much but put you in harm's way in that sense, because you are out in open and now you are a target, or you are an easier target. So it is what it is. I'm not hoping, but the reason why I'm doing it is I live in free country, and I want to do the things that I want to do, and it doesn't matter. I'm willing to accept what's coming, and I'm ready for those things, so it's not a big deal. And the other good thing about this is that I'm nobody. So being nobody is not interesting to nobody, and that's awesome. So military people, and also I think business people who like interviews and who want to speak English, practice it, or at least they want to talk with me. So maybe some of our customers, maybe some of people who I find interesting. So it's not limited to military specifically. Then we also have history episodes with Erik Heldur. And Erik Heldur is one interesting dude. I think our first 8 episodes are with him. And we don't have much views at the moment because we suck, I guess, with pushing the information out. But we will get better over time. But the episode with Erik, we have so far focused on history, and mainly the history of Estonia, some of the leaders. And one of the main reasons of that is because I want to learn, and I like having conversations with Erik, because he has a lot of experience, and he has a very wide span of understanding of different things. And he has an interesting background as well. So he's been 25 years in the law enforcement. Out of that 25 years, during the 25 years, he's been running the Estonian drug enforcement agency. Actually, he built it up during the early days of Estonia. Then he was part of Estonian secret police, which is kind of equivalent of FBI. Then he was second in command in Estonian I would say intelligence agency. I would say he was there, second in command in FBI. And then eventually he run Estonian Customs. And then eventually at some point I asked him to join Combat Ready as an instructor. And since then we have been getting along very well, very nicely. There are some other reasons why I thought he's awesome, but I will leave those for the future. And I think one of the episodes what we will do as an interview will be with Erik, because his understanding of life is fascinating to me. So I would like to share that with you as well. What else have I wrote here? Content is for founders, entrepreneurs, leadership, and personal development content. So I would say yes. So who is this podcast for? Actually, I have no idea. I hope it will be for people like me. The person most definitely kind of has to respect military, because that's my background and that's why what I believe in, it has influenced my belief system. But I think I am a founder, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a CEO, I'm a team member, I'm a father, I'm a friend. I like history, I like politics, and I like talking about them a little bit internally. I don't like it as a thing. I will hopefully don't have to be a politician. Maybe in the future when I'm like 50, 60 and I have nothing else to do, then and there is a need for my service, then I might go. But even though things in the world are interesting to me, because it's tied together a lot with leadership, and leadership is one of my topics that I am fond of and learning a lot all the time, everywhere, because I have to implement it here at home, raising kids, building a relationship with wife. So another topic that I'm very interested in is human intelligence or psychology, and I have a bit of background in that world as well. So that could be also an interesting thing. We even have a course, how to human, elicitation techniques, asking questions, opening up people, getting the information that is required or needed. All that world is very fascinating for me. And I think we will have discussions on that topic as well, because there are a lot of interesting people who actually, I know they are also a bunch of people who don't want to be in front of a camera, but still those topics are well known, well written about, and I think those will be topics that we're going to be talking about as well. So who is this content for? I don't know. Maybe, no idea. But I would say if you are a human, we are talking about humans and their endeavors, their development and stuff like that. And maybe there will be also some educational podcasts or episodes. I don't know if there are even podcasts, but they could be just content creation. I don't know, 10-15 minutes on a topic. But again, I don't limit myself at the moment to anything. Same goes with the name. I really am not sure if the name of the podcast should be my name, because I really kind of like don't like it. But I have a team behind me doing this, and we will do this for a long time. That's why we put together the team. And in the team, we have a marketer, we have video creator, we have Erik, who is focusing on history, and then we have me. And they're all part of Combat Ready's team. And we are just doing this as one of the endeavors because maybe it is interesting and I just needed the hobby. So we don't know where we will go, but definitely we will continue this and keeping up this, and we will put out episode every week, at least one. And at the moment we're also testing with the shorts and reels, and we have an Instagram account, we have LinkedIn account. Well, in LinkedIn it's just me, but in Instagram we have actual Remo podcast account. So things are still evolving. We just wanted to get going, so at least the ball rolls, then things start to happen. That's when we start getting feedback. So where do we plan to go? We plan to be educational and useful. And if we are useful, maybe we will go somewhere, maybe we will not. So how do we plan to go? I just plan to be myself. I really don't like to be someone else, even though I've tried many times. I've tried to mimic many successful people. It actually has worked out, but with this, I try to be me. So as I said, episode posting schedule, every week we will have one. At the moment it's coming out every Wednesday, but that may change as well because we don't know yet what's the best time. Most likely it will be in the future, I would say, during the weekends. Why? Because I think podcasts are more useful to be listened during the weekend or in the evenings. So I don't know. It doesn't really matter. We will post it at some point, once in a week. At the moment, this is the studio. It is in my apartment. It is fucking shit. Sadly, it took me today an hour to set it up. And we just bought cheap stuff. And then we just wanted to get rolling. So there will be definitely changes in the podcast setting as well, but that's how it is at the moment. I will do some of them here, but a lot of interviews I think will be online. Why? Because that's the easiest way. Because it's more about what we speak rather than watching, even though I like watching people speak because it gives something else. It gives the podcast a soul. It gives you I don't know, seeing people speak and seeing their faces, it's different. So we will definitely have video podcasts. We don't have only voice podcasts. So how to contact us? How to send questions? Just contact me, Remo Ojaste, on LinkedIn, in Facebook, or in Instagram. Or send me an email, remo@combatready.ee. But yeah, I think Instagram, Remo Podcast, that's the best place to ask questions for this podcast. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't know what else to say. Let me think. I think everything is covered. And that's the episode 00. Me speaking about what's going to happen. So hopefully it will be a good journey for you as well, because I know it will be interesting for me, and that's the most important thing at the moment, because we don't have many people watching us. So talk to you soon.